Today I fucked up by passing gas in my own apartment. Obligatory, this happened several hours ago. So for context, I have IBS and ulcerative colitis. I'm in the middle of a bad flare-up, so I'm currently taking suppositories. We're mostly adults here, I think. But for those of you unaware, suppositories are medications that are in greasy capsules that are put into the rectum for administration. I put mine in before I go to sleep, and I don't know if this is everyone's fault experience, but I always wake up very gassy, like it blocks me from farting in my sleep. Story. I woke up around noon, and instantly felt bloated. As I started to shift around in bed, I could feel the pressure growing in my behind, the gases that had built up overnight begging to be released into the open air. I can't let them free when laying in bed, because the suppository melts, so I would be releasing a greasy mess into my underwear. I sit up, ready to leave for the bathroom. Suddenly, I remember that my roommate's cousin is staying over for the weekend. The amount of gas currently in my intestines could have supplied power for all of Texas, and I get embarrassed easily by bathroom functions, and figured if he was here I could just get showered at the same time, having the running water covering up the sound of my blasting on the toilet. So I listen for a moment. My apartment isn't small, but it's not the Ritz, so you can hear what's going on in other rooms even with closed doors. I hear nothing. Her cousin had come over so they could go to a meditation retreat, I remembered, and that was all day, so they were probably away at that. No problem. The methane in my gut sensed this thought, and shifted around in a way that let me know that in a minute or so the decision of releasing it would no longer be in my hands. So I head to the bathroom, sit down, and release hell. Cathedral acoustics had nothing on the reverb of that porcelain bowl. Waves were forming in the water as I unleashed the loudest, wettest, from the grease, booming farts known to man. Elon Musk would have been jealous of the liftoff I achieved from the expelled gases. Poseidon kissed me several times solely from the force of the ejection, no solids needed. Finally, after at least 5 minutes of constant gas, the fracking expedition started to run dry, and I let out the last few small toots. I wiped, washed my hands, and with my pants significantly looser, I went out to the kitchen to grab breakfast. On the way I glanced into the living room, and my heart sank. There, sitting on the middle of the floor, in front of an open laptop, were my roommate and her cousin. Of course, COVID. The meditation retreat was online. They were sitting cross-legged, hands on their knees, backs up straight, and thankfully, facing away from them. I shudder to think about what emotions they were expressing with just their faces. I didn't even grab food, just ran back to my room, mortified. I don't know how that particular session went, but I know for a fact that they didn't achieve nirvana during it, or at least, not the level that I reached while sitting on that white throne. TL, doctor, I thought I was alone in my apartment and went ahead and farted full volume in my bathroom. Left the bathroom and discovered that my roommate and her cousin were trying to meditate it in the living room. But I know for a fact that they didn't achieve nirvana during it. Lol. Sorry op. Farts will never not be funny. This is the stuff I live for when opening the Today I Fucked Up subreddit. Snort laughed at this. Thank you. I expelled air quickly from my nose reading this comment. The fracking expedition began to run dry. That's Pulitzer shit right there. Awesome story. Yep, has the soul of a poet, no doubt. They were probably jealous of your level of control during your, to them may have sounded like, Tibetan throat singing exercise. Plot twist, I'm invited next year and instructed to eat bean soup first. I walk in and they introduce me as the musical guest. Fuck them, you live there too. Rip away. I just get so embarrassed. Having IBS but being bathroom shy as hell. Rip away, more like rest in peace away from anyone with ears. Today I fucked up by not realizing my husband is the major cause of my illness. Too long didn't read, at bottom. More like over the last 10 years IFU. I love my husband, he is mostly awesome, hugely supportive, but a prankster in a very specific way. He likes to scare me. All the women in my family are very easily startled and often let out ear-piercing screams over relatively small things like someone sneezing nearby. My startle response developed after some major trauma and I had PTSD for years after. That was roughly 15 years ago. In the time since, My husband has helped me find a therapist, get on anxiety meds, and comforted me endlessly as I healed emotionally. Startling me so I scream has been pretty common for friends and co-workers to do over the years, too. They think it's funny and I nervously laugh in relief, so it looks like I think it's funny, too. I didn't mind for a long time. I certainly made my mom startle scream tons when I was a kid and thought it was hilarious. It got very annoying at work and I eventually rearranged my station so people couldn't sneak up behind me anymore. I was working in a greenhouse with a very casual work environment and I'm very playful with co-workers, so I'm sure they thought of it as a game. At home I can be startled enough to yelp and jump if I walk into a room that I didn't think anyone was in, but found my roommate, husband, or dog in there. When I get startled enough to scream, I have a huge rush of adrenaline course through my body and I'm shaky for a while after. On a completely different note, I have terrible GI issues. I've been going to specialists and having tests and surgeries done to try to figure out the causes. Basically I'll have a week where I feel great, then a week or two where it's constant cramps and diarrhea. Like many people, when they can't find a cause for major GI issues they lump us all into its IBS. Treating IBS is vaguely scientific, food sensitivities, and lots of I don't know. Try these 20 things and try to find a pattern. It sucks. My husband is deeply concerned and has learned to cook and bake from scratch to avoid my many sensitivities. Despite being crazy careful about what I eat, getting exercise, etc., sometimes I just have awful weeks. Often my husband will suggest that I must have eaten the wrong thing or maybe it's a new sensitivity. He really wants to help me. You can all see where this is going. About a month ago, he jumped at me from a hiding spot so I would startle scream. BTW, I totally hide and jump out at him on the rare occasion. I was sick almost immediately. We joked that he was the cause. A couple weeks later, after feeling great for a while, the same thing happened. That time we began to actually wonder if the adrenaline rush from being scared really was the trigger. Well, I felt great this last week. I told him he needed to scare me again so we could see if I got sick right after. You've got to be scientific about this, of course. Well, tonight I screamed and then was sick within an hour. Hypothesis confirmed. My husband is the major trigger of my IBS. He is in awe of his power and now gripped with guilt for the literal years of pain he's inadvertently caused. He promised to try to be careful about not startling me anymore, but, to be fair, I'm wired to scare. Too long didn't read. Husband has helped me with doctors and making meals from scratch for a decade to help my bad IBS. Then we realize his pranks to scare me are the trigger for the bad IBS. Maybe he needs to wear a jingle bell so you can hear him coming. Winking face. I say that with love from a fellow easy startler with a prankster spouse. I am married to an easily startled person. Early on I learned to tap on the walls or call out to her if she's in a shower as I wander through the house to avoid that startle reflex. My wife goes offensive when she's scared, so I almost hate a frying pan, dinner plate, TV remote, etc. when I'd leave my computer or workshop unexpectedly. So, he scares the shit out of you? Too long didn't read. Yelling boo makes me poop. Have a scream and poop will stream. Now make him read this post. Oh, he has, lol. Lol, that was a good story. Know someone who is very similar to you? I think I will refrain from scaring them in the future. I wonder what you guys can fill all the time spent scaring each other. I'm sure they'd appreciate that. Today I fucked up by raising my hand to repeat a cum joke to an entire law school class. Today I fucked up. Actually this happened a few years ago, and it arguably was not a fuck up because I'm pretty sure I'm past the point where it would have had repercussions. I was in a class called bioethics in law school. Among other topics, it dealt with ethical and legal issues arising from reproductive technologies. One day the professor was covering issues relating to sperm banks and told us to Google a particular sperm bank to see what kinds of representations they were making to the public about their services. This was a small class, about 15 people and the professor in a small room. I generally sat either next to or one person away from the professor in a round table format and was pretty engaged. I was the only one to notice the top Google review of the sperm bank was, "This is the worst frozen yogurt place I've ever been to." In the context, It hit me pretty hard. I was having trouble keeping it together and was starting to laugh in this small classroom. I tried to stop laughing but couldn't. For some reason, I felt like the best way to handle this was full disclosure. Maybe I was worried I'd be perceived as the immature dipshit who was just laughing at sperm banks in general. I raised my hand and the professor called on me. I said, "I'm sorry, I just need to get this off my chest. But the top Google review is this is the worst frozen yogurt place I've ever been to." The professor gave a small chuckle. My friend who sat next to me lost his shit. The rest of the class stared blankly at me. I sensed a few people who got it but had marooned their sense of humor far on some distant island of their consciousness. Some law students are naturally humorless. Others may have a sense of humor but are a bundle of anxieties about how to be perceived as professional. No one else laughed. Anyway, I don't feel particularly self-conscious about it. I went on to be a research assistant for the professor and I'm a lawyer now, so I'm guessing the time for consequences is largely gone. Too long didn't read. I raised my hand and, when called on, repeated a joke about eating frozen semen from a sperm bank to a small law school class. As a recent law grad, this is exactly the sense of humor we need. So you were shunned by the class for having part of your soul remaining? Damn, your class has no sense of humor, hee. Best joke my lawyer ever had was telling me to accept the plea deal. Username checks out. I think I would have had more faith in my lawyer if he made sperm bank jokes or acted in any way like a human. I did end up hearing a lot of prison jokes as a result.